welcome to Demming Chronicles Season 2, where we chat with persons whose ideas and opinions can make a difference to our country. They are ideas that are not mainstream, but those are the ideas that can make a difference. Those are the ideas that can push behavior change. On today's edition, we welcome Suzette Cadiz.
Hi, Denise. Thanks for having me.
Great for you to be here. And we also welcome Quilin Achat.
Hi, Denise. Blessed day to all.
Looking forward to a great program with Suzette and Quilin. We'll be back with you shortly. Welcome back, Demming Chronicles and Suzette. It's so good to have you here because what do you do? Tell us.
Well, I'm an educator, and Let's Read is made up of other educators with a passion for literacy. And Let's Read is all about, we believe that once children have access to good books, good diverse books, that they will read and they will discover the joy of reading and become lifelong learners. We want to see a library at the heart of every school, particularly the primary schools, managed by a librarian, where children can just find a book of their own choice, that they can read, the kind of reading that makes you want to read, not the kind of reading that is just to pass a test. And that's what our work is all about.
Yeah. You talked about a library in every school. Well, forgive my ignorance. I thought that was the norm. Isn't there a library in every school?
Most schools have libraries. Some of them, a small number of them function. Most of them don't. And that's how Let's Read came about. We were asked to help in a couple of schools who were concerned about their low literacy levels and difficulties with comprehension and, passing our big exam. And so what we have discovered is that although the libraries are there, they're not functioning. I don't know what has happened to primary school librarians over the years. And the libraries they are not stocked with new stuff. Library isn't really it's on the curriculum, it's not really timetabled. And the libraries become storerooms. So
tell us, how are you able to do your work? Are you government funded?
No, we are not. We work on we are sanctioned by the Ministry of Education. They know about us. We've had meetings with them. But it all depends on corporate and private grants and donations. We do get donations of what we call gently used books, but we really want to get the books, beautiful. Those are they're great, but we also want to give all our children what they deserve, which are new and old classics. They are the most beautiful books out now for children, diverse, and books that get children excited about reading.
You said that you receive gently used books. Could you tell our viewers what do you mean by that, and what kind of books would you be willing to accept?
There's books that families outgrow, and instead of throwing them away or maybe putting them in a sale somewhere, they can give them to us. And we use the term gently used because we are not giving other children books that are torn or written in or old and irrelevant, outdated. So that's what we mean by gently used.
All right. I hope somebody's listening and they have some used books that they will share with you. But tell us, Suzette, how do you measure the impact of this initiative?
Well, we have been doing this for since 2010. So, and we have now reestablished 31 primary school libraries. We also have another program called Book a Baby, where we give new books to pediatricians, and we started with one private doctor in St. James, and then we are now in our Book a Baby program is now in the child assessment unit in Barataria, as well as the teaching hospital in San Fernando. So the idea is that these books that we supply, with a quick little note about the benefits of reading to your children from birth, and once it is prescribed by a medical person, that families will understand. So we have our school program, our primary school program, our Book a Baby, and we've just launched our little free library, which is little book boxes that we put in remote areas, filled with books for ages like 0 to 14. Just giving just access to books for children, especially now. So with all of those programs, our impact is really how we measure the impact is just feedback from the communities and the schools where our work is implemented. We see changing attitudes with teachers that we have worked with for a long time, where they're reading much more for their children, which is so important. When I say reading stories, doing a good read aloud, which is the best advertisement for children wanting to read. These teachers have, some of them have told us that they see a difference, an increasing amount of vocabulary that children use when they're doing their writing. Children come into the libraries because we do, besides reestablishing the library, we do go back and we read for the children, help them to find books. And children in some of these libraries are now beginning to ask for, particular genre of book. They want more in a series. They want more written by a particular author. So that's the way we, that's how we measure. It's slow but steady.
Lovely. Well, you've been around for a long time, so it means that there's still some kind of need. But tell me, what are the consequences of not being able to read?
The consequences of when somebody is, what we would say completely illiterate is it's terrible, because these people cannot navigate life properly. You can't fill out a form. You can't read a medicine bottle, or all the things that we literate people take for granted. But there's also a different kind of illiteracy, if you want to say, where people are functionally literate, but they don't really read and completely understand. And in this day and age, we need people to do deep reading. We need people to do the kind of reading where they can ask questions. How does this affect me? How does this affect the world? Is this real news? Is this fake news? So the consequences are huge to society.
Yes. What is one thing about our education system that, if you could change it, that you would change?
Well, I don't think that's a very easy question. I think the one where in the long term, because there's a couple of things, but in the long term, definitely we need to change our SEA exam. We need to change the way we move children from one level to the next. Our children from age 5 and even younger are being taught, rote learning. They're being taught just how to pass a test. So it's very stringent, and even for the teachers, they are boxed in what they can teach as well. And we lose a lot of children along the way because everybody has to pass this test. We're really only teaching to one type of learner. So, we lose, a lot of brilliant creatives, inventors, anybody who can't be boxed into that one exam type mold. So we definitely, it's not something that can be changed overnight, obviously, because it's the way we move children through from one level to the next. but we need to start thinking about it, and we need not only thinking about it, we need to start putting it into action. And it's going to take long, but if we start, that's what we need to do.
Everything begins with the first step.
That's right. That's right. And in the short term, what I would absolutely change would be to make sure that all primary schools, even the early childhood centers, but particularly primary schools, that they have a state-of-the-art functioning library, where the library is the heart of the school, managed by a librarian. So that all children have access to the kind of books that stimulates their imagination, that makes them dream, that makes them learn about the world, and we need to do that in a with not just one NGO creating libraries. So that would be my other change.
Okay, then, as we begin to dream about a world that is post-COVID, what do you think is important for us to dream of? What would be different?
Well, I think what we need, coming from my perspective, from Let's Read's perspective, we need we are already in the digital age, and COVID has put our schools and our children very quickly into that. But we have to. There has to be a balance. We're not even sure if we're actually going back into physical school, but there has to be a balance with the online school and physical books. We all read on a screen. We all do it many times a day. But for our 0 to 12-year-olds, we must give them access to books and the time to read, because that is going to create readers and lifelong learners. Right. And more than ever, more than ever now, our young people need to be able to do that kind of reading where they question, where they're curious, so they can, everything is coming at them so fast that they need to be able to glean, fake news, real news, what affects me and what can I do to change things.
And as we bring this interview to a close, Suzette, what would be your parting comments for our viewers?
My parting comments would be: share books, read to children, find somebody in your life to read with every day, even if you only read something, a book, a story, a part of a story, a poem, for 5 minutes every day. You are giving your children the gift of literacy.
And on that note, give the gift of literacy. We've interviewed Suzette Cadiz of Let's Read. Demming Chronicles. Like and share our editions. Reach out to Let's Read. Thank you for viewing. We'll be back with you shortly with our next guest. Welcome back, Demming Chronicles Season 2. And our second guest today, Quilin Achat. Quilin, tell me, what do you do?
Hi, Denise. Thanks so much for having me. Well, what do I do right now? I am the brand founder and movement head of a movement called Stay Calm, It's a Plant. I am a cannabis activist here in Trinidad and Tobago and a Rastafarian who is very vocal about our role in this emerging cannabis industry.
All right, so Quilin, what is a cannabis activist? Is that what you said?
Yes. A cannabis activist, how I see my role is that I am out there, I am in the face of the public defending this plant we call cannabis sativa, also known as weed, kush, ganja, marijuana, covering all the names so that people know exactly what we're talking about. So I have taken that responsibility. Pre-decriminalization, my movement started in 2011, 2012. And just as a Rastafarian woman, I thought it very important to represent my community of people who are not just advocates of cannabis, but we consider it to be a sacred plant.
But Quinlan, in our society, there are so many negatives around cannabis.
Yeah.
What would you say? How could we change that if that is what your organization intends? How can we change the negative views around cannabis?
Well, I mean, in preparing for this interview, I had to really think about some of these questions that you sent. And a lot of it comes down to being empowered, you know, in terms of being knowledgeable about the society you live in and knowing your active role in it. Because when we talk about cannabis, in 2021, we have science now that backs up what Rastafari has been saying from the early 60s and 70s, which is the herb is the healing of the nation, right? So for ones like yourself who would have known Rastafari, you know, in its emergence coming out of the Gaviite movement, you know, a lot of the early Rastas said that ital is vital, meaning eat natural, eat from the earth. And we said the herb is the healing of the nation. And we meant cannabis, we meant ganja. And a lot of people, because the criminalization of cannabis in the US, the war on drugs in the early 1960s or so, brought forth a lot of stereotypes and taboos that when we check now with the science that we have, they were all false. And there are documentaries now that say, that show us, not just say, but show us with evidence that President Nixon started a falsified war on drugs and really used it to criminalize minorities in America, particularly Black and brown people and people of Latin American descent. So now that we have that evidence, I mean, when we talk about Trinidad and Tobago, we've decriminalized cannabis. That happened in December 2019. And I hope from that move that had very little resistance. There were few groups who came up to public consultations and said they were not supportive, plenty religious groups. But, you know, it passed. And now we've had a year and a half to really examine this plant, examine our role in a legalized model, which is what the government is proposing next in the Cannabis Control Bill. And what we have to understand is that this plant is nothing of what we were taught. And if I could share a bit of my personal history, how I became an activist, you know, I was raised in a nuclear family, the eldest of 4 children. I went to St. Joseph Convent, San Fernando. I went to university. My parents were not smokers. So I grew up very sheltered in that my idea of what was an ideal citizen was this type of person. And this person does not do these things, right? So they do not drink in excess. They do not smoke. You know, they don't laugh loud. They don't, plenty structure of what, you know, in terms of a society of a middle class person is expected. And it took me an experience in university meeting somebody who was on my student government board who admitted to me that she smoked herb with her boyfriend. And, you know, I was just so caught up in my taboos that I did not question that this was a person who was a leader in the public sphere, but who did something privately, and that she should have had a choice to do that. Instead, I chose to let her go as a friend. And it took me 10 years later to come back and say, girl, I was ignorant. You know, I did not know what it is I thought I knew. And that is also my connection to Rastafari and the herb. Rastafari really freed me from a lot of the misconceptions that we live with and that we are indoctrinated in. So I hope as a parent now and as a leader in my community and as a face of Rastafari that I can speak to those truths. And I hope that people too are seeking the truth to liberate themselves, you know, from certain stereotypes that they never questioned, but they accepted to be the truth.
You talked about the decriminalization of marijuana for the last year and a half.
Yeah.
What impact have you seen with that decriminalization? Has it made the space any easier, or what really has been the impact?
Well, one of the amazing things I've seen is something that I have coined at least here in Trinidad, to say cannapreneurship. You know, we have seen an explosion of cannapreneurs. Young people, I would say around 25 and up, between 25 to 35, who have decided to invest in businesses surrounding cannabis. So a lot of edible companies, even growers, people are getting into the supplements, the nutrients, growing better cannabis. People are importing the lights and the tents, and you know, it's an explosion. It really is. Unfortunately, it's still a very unregulated market, and it's also a market that you know, we have not seen the support of the government to say that they acknowledge that the people now are anxious and eager to get into cannapreneurship, and how can they help direct us. But you know, other than that, too, people's mindsets have lessened a lot. I think that people, I get a lot of older persons asking me now about cannabis and how it can help them. So you know, that is the slow but sure washing away or breaking down of all these stereotypes that I spoke about.
Is there any consideration for persons who, in the past, have been jailed because of their possession of cannabis? Is there any consideration for their records to be expunged?
Well, it was mentioned by the Attorney General last year. I don't have the exact month, but he did come on the public and say that they were going to expunge 800 records and free some of those people who were in jail during the time of COVID in order to lessen the numbers in the jailhouse. Did it happen? I did not. I have not heard. I have not seen any great wave of, you know, freedom. I mean, a call of people, I think 800 persons would have made some sort of ripple in the society where people would have said, yes, this is a move in a positive direction. So it has been mentioned, but we are not seeing that. And if we are going to at least talk about the cannabis control bill, which is around the corner, and I'm sorry, my phone is going off in the background. Um, Yes, but the cannabis control bill makes no mention of expungement of records, which is a great feeling on the legislators, um, you know, on their plate, that they have not seen that to be the first and foremost thing of a legalized cannabis industry.
Think of 5 years into the future. How would you like to see things different with regard to cannabis in Trinidad and Tobago?
I would like to see a lot of young people being empowered to start or be in the cannabis fair. And when I say that, we think about cannabis and we think just smoke it or eat it as a brownie. No, cannabis is multi-level in terms of an industry. We are talking about apparel, you know, we are talking about medicine, we are talking about wellness. Um, you know, there are now yoga instructors who use cannabis in their yoga. You know, we're talking about healthcare in terms of geriatric care, in terms of even childcare. Um, you know, so these are things that I would like to see an emergence, just like how we look at oil and gas, and the country has really diversified itself in that sector, in that there are so many jobs available, everything from quality control to operator. In the same way, I would like to see cannabis being explored, that there are jobs, everything from bud tender to cannabis dispensary worker to farmer. You know, farming is a big thing too. It's not just about sticking a seed in the ground. We actually have very poor farming practices in Trinidad where we use a lot of chemicals. You know, and when we talk about health, that is not good for us. You know, we can't smoke herb that has chemicals in it. We can't use it to make medicine because obviously that will be assimilated into the person's body. So, yeah, I mean, long term, that's what I want to see.
What should the man in the street be looking for to say, well, okay, cannabis is now part of the legal structure, it's now part of the society?
Yeah.
What should we be looking for?
Oh, that's such a loaded question, yeah, because because I really think about change in our country as starting from the citizenry. I think that in terms of mindsets and people feeling empowered, and when we talk about cannabis, cannabis is just one thing that is criminalized and that they've used to keep us in a pigeonhole. So I really, in terms of change, I want everybody, I want the man on the street to see people engaged in their society. I want to see more, I think he would see more businesses that are owned and run by Trinbagonians who are knowledgeable and who are um, thoughtful business owners, not just about making a profit, but that they're going into business because they're passionate about what they want to do and want to accomplish. So to me, it's not just about a change in that, smoking cannabis on the corner or, every block we will see a cannabis dispensary. Because again, for me, it's not just about smoking herb, but it is also about the people waking up to their potential. And I think that the man on the corner in 5 years, if he sees a lot of young people coming out of university and deciding to go into entrepreneurship, it would be a big change for us in terms of how we take back our independence, as individuals in a society and help construct a new country, a new place of being.
And as one of the promoters of cannapreneurship, is that how you
Yes.
call it? Cannapreneurship. So as one of the promoters of cannapreneurship, what would be your parting views to our listeners?
Be knowledgeable, and educate yourself. Think about the people that you're serving. Remember that cannabis is a herb, it's a medicine, so it's not something to be abused. At the same time, as I said, in terms of education, cannabis need to be very vigilant about making sure their products are well labeled so children don't use it by accident, that they know what herb they're using, what ingredients are in their products. Yeah, and that we connect as a community because we're building a cannabis community. It's thriving. It's connected mostly via social media. Most of us, most people still are not out there in a public space, but they're using the social media platform to connect to those who want to get into cannabis. So get out there too. I hope that plenty of them see a need to be visible and say, I am a teacher and I use cannabis. I am a lawyer and I use cannabis because it's a legal substance now. You can, it's decriminalized to the point of 30 grams. And I think you need to claim the plant and really stand up for it. And if everybody does that, I think then we would have change happen at a much faster pace than what we're seeing at the moment.
And you're a mother, you have children.
Yes.
What do you tell your children about the use of cannabis?
Well, actually, my son Jakob, who's 9 years old, we have a cannabis line for children that we are working on coming out with. He drew these characters one August vacation 2 years ago, and he named them the Herbies. So there are 5 characters, and our goal is really to let children know that cannabis is a plant that has healing powers. And that is how he knows about cannabis, my son. I always tell people it's not that cannabis is not safe for children, but we have to know the concentration and the strain that would affect them in a positive way because obviously they're smaller beings than ourselves. So if you're going to use Advil, most of the times they say use half for a child, yes, or aspirin, right? So same way with cannabis, we would not give a dose for a child that was meant for an adult. But my son is very empowered when it comes to cannabis. He knows about it. He helps in the garden in terms of growing different kind of plants, and he knows that cannabis is a plant as well. So we have no qualms about the herb.
And on that note, I wish to thank Quilin for being with us today on Demming Chronicles. Like and share our editions. Comment, give us some feedback. Until next time, Demming Chronicles Season 2. Be safe.